welcome back, everyone, to the next episode of the Fresh Squeeze podcast. I'll be your host today, Jeremy, here with Justin.
Hey there.
And today, as we kind of teased to last week, is our in-depth discussion of the science fiction genre.
Oh, yes.
So, everything, movies, books that have inspired things,
Right.
and everything that encompasses science fiction and what makes it great is what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, it's... depending on what sci-fi you're talking about, it's easy to just kind of hone in on one thing. But I really want to encompass this as not just movies, but sci-fi storytelling in all mediums as a whole.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, we're going to cover quite varied amount of topics today with lots of different things. So, let's just jump right into it. So, first thing is, Justin, what makes a good sci-fi story?
You know what? I'm glad you asked. So, I mean, sci-fi is great, but why?
But why is it great?
You might just like it because you're like, oh, outer space is cool. Lightsabers are cool. It's easy to just think, oh, the basic elements of sci-fi. You're like, why wouldn't you like it?
Mm-hmm.
But personally, since this is something that I deeply care about and ponder about,
Mm-hmm.
I think, to me, what makes a truly good sci-fi story, you really got to break it down. You got to think about what science fiction is, like, at its core.
Mm-hmm.
Just the two words. It's about science. So it's a story that is based within scientific ideas,
Mm-hmm.
whether it could be, scientific ideas that are possible within our universe.
Yeah.
But then you add in the word fiction, and it takes scientific ideas, but you bend them to make the story all the more interesting, although not possible.
So you make scientific ideas that are not possible. Bam.
Science fiction.
But you get fake science.
Fake science. That's a way to
break
say
it down.
So, the best way to make your own fake science.
We're peeling back the layers.
Peeling back the layers here. So, like I said, I think the best type of sci-fi story is something that you take an already established real-world idea,
Mm-hmm.
but you, like I said, you kind of bend it. You have your story based in real science, but you put such a cool, you could say futuristic, you could say alternate universe dimension idea, could be even in the past, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. I mean...
Or it could be in the future.
Or it could be in the future. It could be dystopian. It could be...
Post-apocalyptic.
Neo-noir. I mean...
I love it.
And you just take these things that are based in real life, and you just make it so much more flamboyant and interesting and outer worldly.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's phenomenal franchises and trilogies of stories out there that capture this greatly.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think makes a great sci-fi story is when you take elements from life and you take things from your imagination and combine them together into something that seems real when you read it or watch it or whatever.
Yeah.
So, as you can see, this sci-fi is deep thinking stuff.
It's deep thinking stuff.
So
it really is.
You really got to be quite a visionary to do this type of work.
I mean, as most people know, like some of our favorite things in entertainment are all sci-fi related.
Right.
Because sci-fi is just, it's such a large and vast genre that there's so much to love. You know?
Exactly. Like, you can be a great writer or storyteller or screenwriter by just, making a drama, making an adventure movie.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about sci-fi is that the other core component is you can have great characters, you can have a cool plot, but it's all about world building.
And I'm glad you brought that up. So I was just thinking in my head about some of my favorite styles of worlds and sci-fi things. I'm sure you agree, but yeah, obviously, yeah, you can have a great story, but you can't have good characters without a cool setting. If your world and setting does not fit and is up to par with the rest of your story, I feel like it'd just be sloppy,
Correct.
And at least me personally, some of my favorite like sci-fi type settings, or is there anything that's either like I mean, this is gonna sound pretty bland, but like, okay, so anything like futuristic, and when I say that, I mean like worlds like Neo Tokyo from Akira,
Yes.
places like the setting in Blade Runner, or like Ghost in the Shell,
Yes.
those types of things where it's like still cities, but they're neo futuristic, like it's almost like futuristic steampunk is almost what I would
Yeah.
describe it as, which is so cool, those two things, because they almost seem, you think of steampunk, you think of like, oh, old, but futuristic is new, so you blend them together and it's perfect, I think.
Oh, I feel you for sure. Like, something like just saying you like a futuristic story, it sounds basic, but it's the best form for creating such an interesting and unique story.
And because obviously the future is obviously so unknown, you can do whatever you want with it. You know what I mean? That's why obviously a lot of things do take place in the future, is because you can do anything you want. Because then, if it's a lot of times when you do things that are strictly like in the past, you might have to be more like historically accurate or whatever.
Right.
I mean, as sci-fi, you might not, but still, if you do things in the future, you have a lot more things to work with.
There you go.
So.
Yeah, because it's interesting to think how I guess we'll kind of throughout this episode talk about not only our interests, but kind of how sci-fi has progressed over popular culture. It's interesting how, think back in like the 50s and 60s, the future, it was seen as like bright and inventive and chrome.
Everything is chrome in the future.
Yes.
Like when I think of like the future that people used to think of back in the day, I think of in Meet the Robinsons.
Yeah.
When everything's all bright and sunny, and there's flying cars everywhere.
Everything looks so innovative and shiny and futuristic in a way.
Yeah. But then, and a lot of things, I feel like it's more like darker tone setting, but still similar, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. And now storytelling in like the past 30 or 40 years, it's more like, okay, if we're going to make a futuristic sci-fi story, we like to think that the future is going to be better for mankind, but let's take how civilization is now and let's
just fast track it
100 years.
Yeah.
They're like, there's going to be people at the top who have made some really innovative changes to the world, but there's also still going to be the slums of the world.
Yeah, and those people at the top only got there because they did things that they shouldn't have. Or,
Yeah, it's really interesting when when a story shows the future is not all bright and fancy.
Like, some of it can be all glitz and glam, but there's always going to be darker parts.
Right. And sometimes out of that story, your protagonist or main character, grows out of that low point in the society, and that's where you get the good versus the bad. You got the top 1%ers and their big corporations versus the middle class people fighting for what's right.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to always think about how different avenues you can have only of futuristic sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's definitely what all those points that me and you both listed are really the pinnacle of sci-fi storytelling.
I was trying to find it just now on my phone, but I couldn't find it. But another example that I really like of when we were talking about, how in the future there is still that distinction between like the upper echelon class is in the series Alita Battle Angel.
Okay.
Is I was trying to find the name of the world that's called, but in that series, it's in the future. I don't remember what year, but it's several hundred years in the future. And down on the Earth, I mean, it's still Earth, but it's kind of grungy.
Right.
It's all like the lower class people. They're still trying to get by, but then there's this. It's almost like a floating society up in the sky. Imagine just like New York, like the entire thing, but it's just like floating in the sky.
Sure.
And it's all like the high class people that have made it. That's just what I think of, because
like Earth is like devastated.
It's really like polluted, and all the people down there want to get up there, but I just think it was a cool concept and stuff. So
Yeah,
that's kind of what I thought
that's
of.
definitely a cool thing to be portrayed. So yeah, I think those are some main points of really what makes a good sci-fi story.
Yeah.
And so I guess another thing is like I would like to express what I think is the greatest expression of sci-fi storytelling. And you might know what I think. You might think you know what I'm gonna say, but you might not. But what I said when I said what I think pure sci-fi is, you know, earthly science based within fictitious ideas being brought together. I think, although it's not necessarily my favorite outlet of sci-fi storytelling, but what I think is the greatest portrayal of absolute classic sci-fi storytelling is actually through Star Trek.
Ah, okay.
Now, I say that, although me, the huge Star Wars fan, I'm not saying Star Trek's better, but I think it's a better portrayal of classic futuristic sci-fi.
Of what the world could be like in futuristic societies.
In a couple hundred years.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Agree.
Because, you know, in Star Trek, it's based within Earth, in the Milky Way galaxy, just a few hundred years in the future. And it's all about the Starfleet and Enterprise crew they're able to go out into the universe and explore strange new worlds, as they say.
Yeah. And I mean, and it basically still is what the world is today, you know. They've got their cities, their societies, their different classes of people, you know. They've got the Starfleet, which is basically just the space military, if you think about it that way.
The Flight Academy.
Yeah, you know, they've got, you know, their ships, they've got their, like, the Starship Enterprise and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Like, you know, the 1960s was the pinnacle of modern science fiction storytelling.
Yeah.
So when that show came out, although it's dated now, it was revolutionary.
Yeah. Because they had never seen anything like that before.
Never seen anything like that. This whole portrayal of a relatively high production value of space exploration and aliens and flying spaceships and all.
Yeah. Now, what I do think is funny, especially from things from that era, is now obviously, you know, in the 60s, they had a very, I mean, you could say hopeful view of the future.
Right.
It is funny because there are a lot of things where it'll have been made in the 50s or the 60s, but it was like, this takes place in 2015, you know, and it's like none of that happened, you know.
Yeah, lately there's been so many like movie storylines that have been outdated the past few years.
Yeah, I don't remember. There was something we watched, and it said it took place in like 2019. I don't know, but
well, because you know, Back to the Future 2 took place in like 2015.
Yeah, maybe that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember because there's a screenshot from the movie, and it says like Jaws 25 came out that year or whatever, and I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, so it's always funny to see what people's view of the future.
You know, and they had the hoverboards and which we kind of have, you know.
I mean,
but
you could
to
say
an
to an extent,
you know,
you can guess.
But,
but yeah,
it is funny to see what they expected to have us have, you know, almost 60 years later.
Yeah, that's why, you know, if a story only goes like 50 years in the future, things aren't going to change that much.
Yeah.
There's going to be smaller scale technological increases, but not as much as they expect in Back to the Future or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're working like 500 years in the future, you got some leeway there.
Well, that's why Star Trek works.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
saying it's a few hundred years in the future.
Yeah.
We could be exploring Mars within the next decade or so.
We could, yeah.
So yeah. I think from my perspective that Star Trek throughout, it's been around for like over 50 years now.
Yeah.
There's actually if you think about it, there's so much Star Trek content.
There is, because I mean, obviously there's, not counting the recent movies, there's all of the old movies, but then there's the, you know,
all the shows,
the Star Trek show, and you know, there's
because the original show and the Next Generation,
you know, since they've, you know, Picard, and you know, you've got Kirk, and you've got all these different like Star Trek timelines of different things, you know.
Correct. So yeah, I think that is definitely the 20th century's finest portrayal of what science fiction purely should be.
Yeah.
But moving on from its purest form, let's go on to its frankly most personally enjoyable form. So let's talk about Star Wars.
Let's talk about Star Wars. We never do that.
Yeah, we never do that. I mean, that's pretty rare on this show.
That's pretty rare.
You know, if someone asks me what my favorite sci-fi movie is, I'm still going to say one of the original three.
Yeah,
of the
probably.
trilogy.
I mean, they're too iconic not to say.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, if you want to get real deep and technical, I wouldn't even say that at its core Star Wars is even sci-fi.
Yeah.
Technically, I would categorize it as space fantasy.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Because, you know, Star Wars is not based within. There was no Earth. There's no Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah. It's all.
There is
a different galaxy.
There's no earthly science to be applied there.
Nothing in that universe is the same as ours.
It's all based within its own rules, its
Yeah.
own scientific ideas. So that's why, although it's a space story, it's technically more of a fantasy, you know, fairy tale based story than it is a science fiction story.
Yeah.
You could almost relate it more to of like, technically, Lord of the Rings,
But in space.
in space,
Basically.
because you got warriors that are dark and light.
There's
and
different factions
different
of people.
factions.
There's, you know, warring nations trying to conquer the next, somebody on a journey to do something, you know, and
different planets versus different, you know, regions.
different realms, you know.
Different realms.
So
It's very much so a fantasy story.
I can see that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially, yeah, definitely. And if you in the most niche category you could get to is not only space fantasy, it's also been described by, I don't know who came up with this, but as space opera.
I have heard that term, yeah.
Which I think that's a really awesome term.
I don't exactly know why it's considered a space opera, but
Because at its core, every modern story is based from Shakespeare.
right. Yeah.
And, you know, Greek mythology
Yeah.
and, you know, like the Odyssey and all of that.
Yeah.
So at that core, that is like peak fantasy drama.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, Star Wars is just about space warriors and aliens.
Yeah.
So it's very
That
much
makes
so
sense.
a Shakespearean tale of ways. So, you know, operas are considered like, when entertainment was at its initial peak, that a stage opera was considered the ultimate epic portrayal of story.
The pinnacle of entertainment.
So the fact that we now have space operas is just the next evolution of Shakespeare.
It's just the next step.
So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. For sure.
But so, and it's really awesome. There's not really any other things that you can place in the space opera category, which is why it's so awesome that Star Wars has its own category.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's interestingly enough, everybody thinks Star Wars came up with all of its ideas.
Yeah.
Because it has, over its 40-year period, inspired so much thing in filmmaking.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you really think about it, like, I guess we can talk about the impact it's had and then talk about actually its predecessors.
Its inspirations, yeah.
Over the decades, those three movies have had an immense impact on filmmaking and storytelling in general. Not only did it create companies, it's so crazy that these were such revolutionary movies that they created entire new effects companies just to make them.
Yeah.
So they made ILM, Industrial Light and Magic. They created that just so they could do their visual effects and their prop effects and all those type of things, which is now used for all kinds of movies. It was used in Jurassic Park, and it was used for the prequels, now even being used for the Avengers and all.
Yeah,
so,
that's cool.
You know, they really pioneered
the effects
of
industry
of this era.
Yeah.
And it not only influenced effects in filmmaking, if you listen to an interview of any modern director or writer who writes within that genre, like I've seen, you know, people like James Gunn from Guardians of the Galaxy, the Russos, really anybody who works with big blockbusters, they'll say, I got into filmmaking more or less because I saw Star Wars when I was a kid.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome.
Everyone has an origin story.
Correct. So, but even though Star Wars is credited with influencing so much in cinema, technically, it was only made in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, he had to get his inspiration
He had
from
to get
somewhere.
his inspiration from somewhere else. So
Yeah.
there's another 40, 50 plus years of storytelling behind him that he took stuff from.
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting, especially seeing some of these other inspirations coming to light in popularity now these days.
Yeah.
Or we've just now discovered them.
Uh-huh.
One that is I guess now somewhat surprisingly an inspiration is that George Lucas read the Dune novel from the 1960s by Frank Herbert, which it's considered one of the greatest sci-fi stories ever told in novelization form. And now it has a fantastic movie adaptation.
Soon to be part 2.
Yeah, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But, I got a list here of... It's interesting how much, George Lucas really went to different avenues to look for things for inspiration.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might just think it's coincidence, but if you look at these type of stories, you see the similarities, as in, within the story of the Dune mythology, you've got similar themes of, you got the Galactic Empire versus the Imperium. You've got same type of, like we said, houses or factions.
Yeah. Spice.
You got the spices of Arrakis versus their spice smugglers in Star Wars.
And the spice mines.
The spice mines of Kessel. You could compare locations, Arrakis and Tatooine.
Yeah.
Caladan and Alderaan.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, there are both vehicles in both stories referred to as sandcrawlers.
Yeah. Okay.
There's the Jawas,
Yeah.
sandcrawlers, and then those big things that
I didn't realize they were called sandcrawlers.
they're actually called sandcrawlers.
Yeah.
And to get more deeply into the character making, there's everybody would consider the Jedi and the Sith as the greatest cinematic warriors.
A rivalry of all time, yeah.
But really, back in the Dune books, you had Jedi use the Jedi mind tricks, but characters in Dune use what's called the voice.
Oh man, that was so good.
They're basically just both mind manipulation powers.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was some Vulcan mind melt stuff when we were watching the movie.
Yeah.
Because as of this coming out, the Dune theatrical movie came out a week from today, prior from today. So if you haven't watched it, you should go watch it because it's amazing.
Correct. And so you have Jedi who have powers of mind manipulation, whereas in Dune there's basically only female characters who are part of a somewhat of a cult of women who have powers.
Yeah.
Bene Gesserit, but they have similar powers to the Jedi in a way. And you could also relate things like the Fremen tribe is kind of like the Tusken Raiders.
The native people
of tribes. So there's lots of overarching themes in these sci-fi stories.
Yeah.
Another one. Well, I'll describe that one last. We also recently started immersing ourselves into more
international
classic cultured cinema.
Yeah, we a good friend of mine recently, within the past few months, has introduced us to some films by the famous Akira Kurosawa, who is a very famous Japanese movie director from the 50s and 60s, who made movies that really inspired so many things of the genre and things like Star Wars.
Even though these movies inherently were not sci-fi.
No, they were all, realistic, like samurai films, all of them black and white, but they still inspired things like that to be, things like Star Wars, like you said. So
Yeah.
George Lucas took a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, it's really cool that these creators can look to things that aren't based within their same genre, but
Still look
just
at the directing and the
take a look at the direction, at the take things from that time period, such as the outfits or the weapons or the fighting styles.
Yeah, and really turn it into something of their own in this different genre.
Right. So yeah, not only is it great to see things that your favorite things were inspired by, but I've acquired the appreciation that new things are great,
but old things are just as good.
Old things should be equally appreciated for the groundwork that they laid for modern entertainment. So if you haven't checked out any of Kurosawa's stuff, you should culture yourself.
Yeah. So far the two we've seen are Sanjuro and Yojimbo.
Both really cool.
Both very cool, interesting pieces of Japanese film, which, like I said, they inspired Star Wars. So if you want to see some Star Wars inspiration, you can find it there.
The big one that I want to see next is Seven Samurai.
Yes, me too. I've heard lots of that.
Definitely the one that probably has the deepest inspiration.
Yeah.
I've seen...
It's probably the most popular, too.
Yeah. I hear it's quite a long feature, but probably worth it.
Yeah.
I've seen some snippets before. I don't know if they're spoilers or not. But,
yeah.
I mean, for now, who really cares about that kind of stuff? But
yeah.
It's more just about the visual storytelling.
Exactly.
I've seen duels in the movie that were directly inspired in the likes of The Mandalorian and even Star Wars Rebels.
You know, after we watch the movies, I can kind of, in my mind, like see like the sword duels that they had in those, and kind of like imagine them as some of the lightsaber duels that we saw in like the original trilogy and stuff like that.
Right.
So
yeah, and since we're watching Rebels right now, this season we're going to be coming up on a heavily Kurosawa inspired episode.
I see. So, interesting.
And also the Mando episode with Ahsoka in it.
Oh,
when she fights what's her name?
That one lady, when they were in that little like garden area.
Yeah, that was very much inspired.
Yeah.
By those type of sequences, so that's really cool. And one last thing that was worth mentioning for Star Wars inspiration is there were some 1960s French comics called Valerian. We saw the...
Oh, there was a movie about that.
You remember that movie we saw a few years ago?
Yeah, several years back, yeah.
That's based off some old comics.
Oh, I didn't know that, okay.
So, yeah, I think that's more of those things where it's kind of just like the general themes you can kind of draw from it.
Yeah, but there wasn't anything super specific.
Maybe like some starship designs or character looks.
Yeah.
The general themes of that era sci-fi can kind of be seen in some of the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I got one other one that's worth mentioning from the 1960s era is, I guess it's probably considered the number one inspirational film from that time, was 2001: Space Odyssey.
Mm-hmm. Now you've seen that, but I haven't.
Like peak quarantine last year, I decided, I think I'm going to try this movie out.
Yeah.
And so I watched it because I just wanted to have an appreciation for where science fiction comes from today. It was quite an interesting experience.
Justin told me something about it after he'd watched it.
It was quite a long movie as well, probably almost 3 hours. I think I split it into 2 viewings.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of long.
Because the inspiration this movie has given to filmmaking is off the charts.
Yeah.
Like, I can definitely say that I appreciate at the forefront that this is yet another thing that set a bar for future creativity.
Mm-hmm.
But as a film itself, it didn't capture my interest that much.
Yeah, I remember you showed me some clips from it. And I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah, the opening sequence seemingly had no connection to it at all.
And wasn't that clip you showed me, didn't you say that was the last like 15 minutes of the movie?
And
it was just like one scene continuous.
The last like 15 minutes of the movie is a total trip.
It's just like flashing lights and colors.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely, if I were to give a review on it, I appreciate it for its art form and just the ways
and the things that it's done.
things that it's done, laying the groundwork for stories in the future. But
Yeah.
as its own story, I didn't get much out of it.
Yeah.
The best part was probably the middle, because that's the part that had the best story points.
Yeah.
But then the rest of the visuals were amazing.
Yeah.
But for that time, and then the rest of the story just completely melded together. I'm just like, come on, let me know what's happening.
Yeah. And it doesn't help that it's 3 hours long.
Yeah.
So
It poses right in the middle, because you may have heard of HAL 9000.
yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Because it's about the middle part of the movie is about the AI of a ship overtaking an astronaut,
Yeah.
and then so that was an interesting themes, but I feel like they don't follow through on it enough.
Yeah. It was just kind of like half-baked idea.
It
or
was
something.
kind of a half-baked idea, so that the rest of the movie could just kind of be visual nonsense.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, any film fans that put that in their top 10, but it just wasn't for me.
Yeah. You appreciate it, but it wasn't there story-wise.
Yeah, it's meant to be studied in art school, and that's it.
And that should be it. If you watch that in your free time, I'm sorry. That's kind of weird.
That's kind of weird. I'm sorry. As much as I can appreciate old stuff.
Yeah.
But like I said, with its inspiration, a lot of its spaceship architectural design can be seen within Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like the interiors of the Falcon or the Star Destroyers.
Yeah.
Or...
I mean, both of those designs are both, I feel like, iconic.
Yeah. You know, its use of portrayal of outer space. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it really popularized some classical music that's in that. Because, you know, that song that's just kind of like the dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
That film popularized that.
Okay.
So, and you can really see it in like you can definitely see its inspiration in like Christopher Nolan movies.
Yeah.
And like Interstellar mostly. And
I definitely would know about that.
yeah.
That's a little inside joke if you're a long time listener.
And it definitely gave me more understanding of the caveman SpongeBob episode.
Yeah. Okay, so after Justin watched this movie, he came in and he was like, Jeremy, he's like, first, I want you to watch Caveman SpongeBob scene, okay?
Yes.
Which I was saying, I already have. And I was like, okay. He's like, then I want you to watch this scene from Interstellar. And it was basically
from
the same
Space Odyssey.
thing. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Space Odyssey, yeah. And it was basically the same thing.
So if you've seen both of those, you probably know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
if you know the SpongeBob reference, then you don't even have to see Interstellar. I mean, not Interstellar, Space Odyssey to even know what we're talking about. You know?
Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty funny because
it was funny. I thought it was hilarious.
The fact that they wrote that into SpongeBob.
I mean, yeah, SpongeBob's woke. Okay, he knows
woke culture.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's really interesting to see the even older things that inspired the most popular science fiction story of all time.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about Star Wars?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
For now.
So yeah, I guess we kind of already talked about some historical significance.
Which means it's time for the Dune movie review.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Who wants to go first, me or you? Because we'll have both very different perspectives.
We have two different perspectives. I want you to go first and explain your perspective.
Okay. So as we stated, 1 week prior to this episode airing was the theatrical release of the movie Dune, based off the novel. Now, going into this, I have not read the novel. I have not read it. I have not read about it. I basically knew nothing about this movie, okay?
You just watched the trailers and
I watched the trailer and I was like, okay, this looks cool. There's some actors I know in it. And Justin's hyped for it. That's all I know, okay? So, I knew nothing. All I knew, and I knew that the director that was making it, I liked. So I was like, so far this is hitting all the right notes for me, you know? So
it is definitely that type of movie. Even though when it was announced, we knew it was going to be great.
Yeah, there's just sometimes you just know when a movie's announced, it's going to be fire. It's going to be great. So we watched the movie. Now I was since I didn't have any prior background knowledge to the world, the story, the characters. There was a couple times when Justin paused and was just like, you know what's going on, right? You know who this is, you know who that is, you know what's going on. And if I didn't, he explained it, which helped out. So we go through this movie, and let me just say, like I said, even though no prior knowledge, I was blown away. I thought the movie was amazing, and I was left eager for, part 2, which has been officially announced as of like yesterday or whatever.
Yeah, this week.
This week, because although there were times when I was very confused in the story, I mean, obviously as it goes on, I learned more about, okay, this character is part of this group. This group of people does this. They all have their roles. These are like the antagonists, the bad guy they're coming in, and especially obviously the story, but then also the way from the director, which we already liked. The director who directed it was amazing. The soundtrack was great. So it really was more of I really had to pay attention. I mean, I haven't watched it again. I want to, but the first time I really had to pay attention, so I could kind of, take in all this information.
Right.
But I told Justin that I do want to watch it a second time so that I can this time just appreciate the movie for, what it is. And since I won't have to try as hard as, remembering the characters, what they're doing, where they're going. But overall, I thought it was like a great movie, like 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, I give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
There you go. Yeah.
So I thought it was just about as good as it could get for me from not knowing anything prior. So
cool. I'm glad that you were able to appreciate it and really like it and have fun with it a lot.
Now, Justin said he was excited to watch me watch this movie.
To see the story unfold.
Because there was multiple times that I would look over at Justin with just like a face of utter confusion. I'd be like, what the heck did they just say? Or like, I was like, what is going on? Like, and I'm sure it was funny for him because he's like, yeah, I know what's going on,
Correct. Yeah. So for me, we both heavily enjoyed the experience. I have, in anticipation of the movie last year, I ended up getting the novel, and I read the majority of it that was going to be portrayed in part 1. And prior to reading the book or hearing the movie announcement, I didn't know anything about the story, so I wasn't a fan. But I thought the book was very interesting. It posed some cool otherworldly themes and some cool plot points, but the book's a tough read. There's a lot going on there. It's like 800 pages. But,
yeah, it's pretty long. So
I thought, this is such a cool groundwork, but seeing it visually is just going to be so much more appealing and digestible.
Yeah, especially definitely for someone like me.
So upon seeing it, comparing it to the book, I was quite blown away.
Yeah.
It's, of course, when there's ever source material and they say that they're going to follow it, you're always like, okay, let's see how this is going to go.
Are they though?
Are they really? But I was literally watching this story come to life on screen. Every main plot point that was important to me was being portrayed.
Yeah. Would you say, in your opinion, that you were basically watching this movie unveil page by page, basically?
I mean, basically, at least chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to say that the book had fluff, but they took all of the most intriguing points that would be good on film and just portrayed it.
Because I've heard that a lot of people, never thought that they were gonna make one for this, only because it's so heavy into the space the space clan politics, and they'd be like, nobody would ever enjoy this as a movie, it would never do good.
Yeah, sure, there's action and character intrigue, but there's so much politics to it that it can get so deep and confusing. It's just about intergalactic conflict in a way. The same things that happen today, trade problems.
Yeah, basically.
But not to mention the quality of its portrayal, I just thought the story was beautifully told.
Yeah.
Not to mention that it had the highest production value and, greatest team to work on it ever.
Yeah.
I think, that they couldn't have chose a better director,
Oh
obviously.
no, he was the perfect choice.
Like, the director isn't everything, but they're obviously the backbone of this movie making.
Yeah, if you have a strong director, you have a higher chance of your movie being better.
Right,
know?
and
obviously things can still go wrong, but
I mean, you look at movies like Justice League, the director matters.
yes,
so.
very much so.
So yeah, Villeneuve did phenomenal job directing.
Amazing.
He put together a stellar cast.
Okay, that was one thing I was very impressed by. Like, again, obviously, I didn't know what these characters were supposed to be like anyway, so these actors portraying them was my first time seeing them, and I thought everybody that was in this movie did an amazing job. Everybody from, Timothy Chalamet as Paul.
He was surprisingly great choice.
Now, I've made this known that my favorite,
your favorite performance.
My favorite performance of the whole movie was Paul's mother, Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson. I think she had the best acting performance out of everyone in the entire movie.
She was the screen stealer, man.
Yeah, really was.
Portrayed
she really put her all into this role, and I thought it was amazing.
Deep emotion into that for sure. Yeah, everybody brought their A game. The way that I imagined the characters and the locations were just realized in such a visually interesting and just perfected way.
Yeah.
When it comes to the rest of the crew, Hans Zimmer for the score,
dude,
it's been on repeat in my mind, man.
Yeah,
it's
great.
It really affects you. It puts you in the moment.
Yeah.
Even though we didn't get to see it in theaters, I'm sure IMAX was amazing.
Yeah, we just watched it at in our home basement theater.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's be real. There's just something about Hans making the soundtrack. Not many people can make one like him.
Yeah. If you're not the type of person who really appreciates film soundtracks, he's the best of the best.
He is one of the best, of course.
He's already made some of my favorite film scores.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. I got to give credit to the cinematographer.
Oh, of course.
Name's Greg Frazier. Not only was this a visually appealing movie.
Yeah.
He's had great work in the past. He did season 1 of Mandalorian. He did Rogue One. He's going to be working on the Batman.
I mean, he's basically just got his portfolio right now is just killer. So.
I know. So this trio of crew members, director, cinematographer, and
which is why
composer.
We were so optimistic about this movie that it basically couldn't fail.
You can't have a production of that scale and have it be mid-tier.
Yeah.
Right?
And okay, I just gotta say I was very impressed, and I just thought it was so cool, the sandworms. I just thought they looked awesome.
Yeah, that's the one thing. I
feel like that's probably one of the most simple things of the entire movie, but I thought they were so cool.
Yeah, it's it's Tremors on drugs, but
Tremors times 100.
That's one of the things in the book. They sound cool, but you don't get really the feeling of what it's like to have that thing towering above you.
You think the Sarlacc is big and creepy? No, this ain't Sarlacc.
You think
ain't nothing.
That the crate dragon
from Mando ain't nothing. Okay, this is bigger than all 3 of them combined.
Yeah, that was really a spectacle.
Yeah, that
behold.
was great.
Overall, I personally couldn't have asked for a better adaptation.
Yeah,
it blew me away.
Yeah.
Near perfect modern film for me.
Yeah, Justin personally said he would give it a 5 out of 5.
I would give it a 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
As from reading it and just from a movie maker enjoyment, I don't think it gets any better than that.
I respect, for sure.
I definitely look forward to. They're saying 2 years from this month.
Yeah, I heard that October 2023. So,
which is actually not that bad.
Which, I mean, considering this year is almost, in basically a month, 2 months, this year is going to be over, So then we're already going to be in 2022. Then, a little over a year and a half from then. So,
bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they keep up the pace from part 1, I don't see why part 2 will be any less amazing.
I know. So, let the spice flow.
The spice flow, and obviously won't say too much, but I'm glad that they did, but also didn't leave the part 1 on a cliffhanger. If you know what I mean by that.
It just kind of
really flowed. It kind of just trails off.
Literally.
Get it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just I'm glad it wasn't just like, oh no, they're in peril, boom.
Yeah, if
You
they
know,
would have cut off,
I would have been like, oh my goodness.
at that point in the story where
Yeah.
everything bad starts happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, obviously, yeah, I still want to know what happens. Because, I mean, Justin said he's going to read the rest of the book before the, part 2 comes out. I'll probably just wait to see the movie and suffer,
Yeah.
But, I mean, now that I've seen the first one with a pure experience, I want to go into the second one with the kind of the same experience. Even though I've already been familiar with the characters, it'll still be, movie only at that point,
Yeah, and that's okay, but I told you that I'm really happy I read the story.
Yeah.
Because I was able to appreciate the way they portrayed an accurate story.
Yeah.
And I understood what was happening.
Yeah.
So I really want to do the same thing with the next one. I think that's why some people may have not liked it that much, because it is such a dense storytelling world that
I will say it definitely was.
If you're not someone who's really into this stuff,
Yeah.
you're going to be like, it looked cool, but I didn't really get the story.
I mean, plus it's a commitment because it's a long movie. It's
long movie.
over 2.5 hours.
Right. I mean, if you get engaged, it slides right by.
But I'm gonna be honest. Granted, I mean, we watch a lot of movies, but like I didn't even think it was that long. Once we heard it, I'm like, shoot, we've only got like 45 minutes left. You know what I mean? So like,
that's what happens. So, great stuff.
Great stuff.
If you're into sci-fi or just great movie making, I highly recommend it. It's in theaters now or on HBO Max for the next 30 days. So
yeah,
check it out.
Check it out. It's great.
Yeah, man. It was a sight to behold.
It was.
I look forward to the home release.
Yeah, for sure. We will definitely be owning this one.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have got enough time, Justin.
We got enough time for a little bit of
culture shock. Dun dun dun. We haven't had one of these in a while.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
what's going on?
What's new?
What's going on
What
in
are we
the pop
talking
world?
about? Well, we got one thing that I know we're going to talk about.
Yeah. A trailer for a new thing just dropped this week.
Morning. Yeah, where's this morning? Right?
Well, we got to talk about everything relative.
My bad. This week, sorry. Yeah.
So, what we got popping
I just
today?
exposed our recording day, Justin.
Yeah, you got to talk everything relative to the viewer.
You're right.
What's popping on the internet this week?
Well, this week, a new trailer for... Would you consider it a prequel? Or is it just like an origin story?
I would call it a spin-off, I guess.
Okay, it's a spin-off movie, a Buzz Lightyear movie about... And it's not about Buzz as a toy, but it's about Buzz Lightyear, who the toy is based off of.
As the actual
space astronaut.
Yeah.
So, it's going to go into detail about, Buzz's his journey into space as an astronaut.
Yeah.
And the things he encounters. We're really praying and hoping for a Zurg appearance.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
As a villain. That would be awesome.
I didn't actually start thinking a lot about this movie until I saw the trailer, but it's kind of like, I guess this is just me, but I didn't really make the connection that this wasn't about toy version of Buzz.
Now, when I started watching the trailer, I was just like, I'm not gonna lie. Obviously you can watch the trailer, but at the beginning of the trailer, it shows Buzz getting into a rocket, and I was in my mind, I was like, all right, I'm waiting for like the rocket to be in a bedroom scene, like launch onto a bed or something.
No, this is real.
Or under a bed, but no, it was like real. And then I was looking in some comments on the video, and people were like, yeah, this is like real Buzz Lightyear, and I was like, oh, shoot, and then so
I bet it's kind of like a thing, this is the story of the real Buzz Lightyear. And then maybe they made a documentary about him and they ended up having toys made about
merchandise.
him.
and that's how Andy gets a Buzz Lightyear, or so we think.
Right. So the only thing that the animation looks, great.
I mean,
Pixar
it's modern day Pixar animation, so it looks good.
Even though this is a pretty general thing, I was pretty thrown off by the fact of seeing Buzz Lightyear with hair.
Yeah. Okay. And it's not that he looks bad. It's just that my 21 years of my life have I only seen Buzz Lightyear with a skin tight purple head thing on, So I just think of him. Oh yeah, there's Buzz, but then you might see Buzz Lightyear hair. You're like,
oh, what?
Hold up, he's got hair.
Hold on now.
Because I mean, when I'm like 5 years old, I'm not thinking, oh yeah, I wonder if Buzz Lightyear has hair. You know, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Buzz is Mrs. Nesbit. Okay, you know, like so. It just didn't occur to me until today. You know.
Now they can say, "You are not a toy.
You are not a toy." Also, I hope we get an Academy scene. Okay. Years of Academy training wasted. If we don't get that scene, it's gonna be a little tragic.
I mean, it looks like it'll probably show his training days.
I know.
His,
I want to see
his space buddies.
I want to see Buzz graduate from the Academy. Okay.
I want to be there for a ceremony.
I want to be there for a ceremony. Okay.
So, and you said that if this one's successful, they should
do another spin-off of and. They should do one of the Woody's Roundup TV show. You know, I think what was that? That was in Toy Story 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. When
But would it be another like real life scenario for the character?
I see that one. I think could be either, because I mean, technically the TV show was made for the toy. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
right?
It was more of a direct connection.
Yeah, which I think could still be cool, because then you can kind of play off that whole Toy Story aspect. But I mean, if they did want to make like an actual like Woody Western thing, that could be kind of cool too. Cool. Woody's Roundup, Woody's Roundup. You know, have a little theme song in there. You know, that'd be cool.
You're riding Bullseye, and you got Jesse's there. And,
yeah, that'd be cool.
They just have to have some sort of antagonist.
Yeah,
I don't know if the prospector would work in there.
Yeah, I mean, unless he was really menacing, you know.
I think within their.
Now, if they did if they did the show off based off the toy stuff, then they could use Prospector, you know.
He wasn't actually supposed to be a villain.
Yeah, but we all know he was a menace to society, okay?
As a toy, he was.
Yeah,
yes.
But if they did realistic, they'd have to just do something else, you know. But
so yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I'm optimistic. I think it could be cool.
Could be cool. So next summer.
Next summer. Anything else that's popping in the news, Justin?
What else be popping? I mean, I guess that's the only thing I immediately thought of.
Yeah, that's all I have too.
Like I said,
it was just convenient timing for us.
Convenient timing. That's what we like to talk about. Convenience.
Conveniency. We're convenient on this podcast.
So yeah, that's what we got.
I think that's all we got for today. Well, thank you so much for listening again this week to our science fiction discussion. If you have any thoughts, questions, or your own opinions about the sci-fi genre or movies as a whole, let us know.
Drop them.
Remember, we put these out on both YouTube and Spotify, so check us out on either spot. Remember to, again, check us out YouTube, and we always post our weekly episode updates or updates about the show on our Instagram. Correct. So stay tuned on there. Other than that, I think we're wrapped up for the day. Justin, anything you want to say?
I just want to say, wrap it up to infinity and beyond.
There we go. All right. See you, everyone.
Live long and prosper. May the force be with you. All that stuff.